So it's funny. This week, I've actually been feeling a bit overwhelmed regarding what I should talk about. There's really so much information that I've been gathering recently. I wasn't sure if I should try to do an updated Zen 5 leak with more details, start talking about RDNA 4, MI300, or maybe just a rounded out Phoenix, Meteor Lake, or RDNA 3 leak. But I've come across something that I'm actually even more excited to talk about now, because although some websites seem to think we know everything, there's some key details about AMD's upcoming 600 series chipsets for Zen 4 later this year that I think you guys are going to want to know about. So that's what I want to mostly talk about today. Although before that, I actually do think I've got to address some questions that just keep getting spammed at me about Nvidia Lovelace. And look, it's been frustrating. Undoubtedly, much of these spamming of questions is coming from the barrage of what I can only call is constant flip-flopping of leaks, if you can even call them that anymore, on Twitter. The stories, they just keep on changing. Supposedly, Lovelace is 850 watts, then 600 watts, then 900 watts, then 450 watts, 15,000 cores for RDNA 3, then 12,000 cores, 4 GCDs, 2, 1. I mean, what number hasn't been farted on Twitter by now? Look, guys, 90% of the time, I am not going to comment on random stuff being spammed on Twitter, especially when the stuff being spammed contradicted what some leakers said themselves a week before. Even if it gets a front page story on WCCF Tech that contradicts another story that was just the front page, I don't think being a front page story on one of these websites warrants me talking about it, because I'm sorry, and I did actually have to really kind of think about how I want to say this, but I just have to call spade a spade. AMD doesn't change designs of a flagship graphics cards 4 months before it launches. That's just not how this works. And I just can't help but start to feel very confident that AMD and especially Nvidia are messing with leakers right now, and the constant waffling around of information is proving that a lot of people are guessing half of the time. Otherwise, and I know this sounds harsh, but otherwise I don't know why you're changing your story and putting maybe in so many tweets. Maybe you're not sure of what your sources told you? Are you sure they're good sources? So I guess I'm just going to say this. The more noise that gets thrown out there, the less I'm paying attention to it, because the more it just comes off as, well, severely unprofessional and unverified to me. Now, I think there's going to be a lot of people that look at this and go, oh, he's calling out this person or that person. And I want to stress that I'm not, frankly, because I'm just so uninterested in doing that. There are plenty of Twitter leakers that I cover consistently on Broken Silicon episodes, and will continue to do so when I see something that catches my eye, that I think seems true. But I can't just, comment on an increasing amount of noise that's being thrown out there, because the more noise that's thrown out there, the more it doesn't seem like it's worth paying attention to. And if there's anyone that takes this personally, I would just say, it's not meant to be personal. Think about what I'm saying. When you change fundamental things about what you're saying in an upcoming product that's only 3 to 6 months away is week over week, I don't know why I would take you seriously for a while. So to the people spamming me questions, if I'm not talking about it, it's probably for a reason, And so, well, now that we're past that opening statement, what isn't noise to me? What can I confirm? Well, first of all, actually, I'm a little confused as to why so many of the questions I've been asked in the comments of every tweet and video I've basically posted in the past couple weeks is about when Lovelace is launching, because Lovelace was always generally expected and leaked by me to be a Q3 product. As long as over a year ago, I was saying that Nvidia, despite what they were saying publicly, was suspecting behind the scenes that supply would be catching up with demand by the end of Q1, and that's when they would be getting their new generation ready. And well, that's what's happening right now if you look at the plummeting prices on multiple online retailers. Additionally, as recent as my recent big Lovelace leak, I said that Ampere production could stop as soon as May, with the resulting successive generation Lovelace to follow right after that. So, like a July launch for Lovelace isn't surprising if you've just watched my recent Lovelace leak or even my leaks from a year ago. And I do want to just be very clear about the Lovelace launch date when it comes to what I've been told recently. And that's that, well, actually, Nvidia did expect prices to crash a bit in late Q1, early Q2 of this year. And I've even heard some people actually suggest to me that Nvidia was kind of intentionally going to flood a bunch of products before AMD could get their RDNA 2 refresh out, which they kind of have done, it seems. However, I am also told that they did not expect pricing to crash this fast. This has actually surprised Nvidia quite a bit, to the point that they're not just thinking of delaying Lovelace, but it's crashing so quickly, the pricing, that they kind of see it as an overall loss already. And so despite a lot of distributors I've talked to, I think out of fear, saying there's no way Lovelace could launch soon, I don't know, my better connected sources are telling me that, in fact, there's a decent chance Nvidia is trying to move up the launch from what was originally stated as being August or maybe late July to as soon as possible. Does that mean early July? Well, it depends what you count as a launch. On the recent Broken Silicon with Tim for Hardware Unboxed, we started laughing about the recent Lovelace rumors, saying, well, where are the cooler leaks? And, well, there they are. There's the cooler leaks. But the reason we were laughing wasn't that we think it's impossible for Nvidia to announce something or show one card off. I mean, they could probably do it right now. Nvidia could announce and show you the full specs or the almost full specs, maybe minus final exact clock speeds of the 4090 Ti right now, today, if they wanted to. But that doesn't mean you can buy it today. Me and Tim were laughing about the fact that even if in an aligned year-over-year sense, like Lovelace launches a little sooner in the year than when Ampere did, that's not that crazy. Most graphics card generations are a little under 2 years between each other. An announcement, a paper launch in July, does not mean you will be able to buy it in July. And so at the end of the day, all I really think about the Nvidia upcoming launch of Lovelace is it's still a Q3 product, guys, just like has been consistently leaked from me for a while now. It's Q3. Might Nvidia tease it soon? Yes. Might they do a paper launch or even a specs sheet launch in mid or even early July? Yes, but I don't. And again, this part here isn't from a source. This is, kind of speculation. I don't think Nvidia is going to do a full Lovelace blowout at Computex. I don't think they will, because there's still probably about a month where they want people who aren't following all of the rumors super closely to be going to stores and buying up the remaining storerooms full of Ampere stock, which I am told a lot of distributors are seriously worried they're going to have to just take a loss on a ton of the cards that they've bought above MSRP to sell above MSRP, which I don't necessarily feel bad for them, but Nvidia doesn't like losing money. So I do feel like what we're going to see at Computex is probably a teaser, not a full unveiling. Although I will say this, I'm not 100% sure of that, okay? So clip this if I end up being wrong about that. That is just opinion. If they do a full unveiling of Lovelace a few days after when this video comes out, that means they are gravely worried about RDNA 3 taking the performance crown and stealing some of their thunder. Which, on that note, I do want to talk a little bit about the questions about RDNA 3 I'm being spammed with, and I'm going to be quick about this. No one should be disappointed by what RDNA 3 ends up performing like. I think it's going to crush Lovelace in efficiency with most of its products, especially in the high end. I believe it's going to bring immensely higher ray tracing performance, and I believe it's going to, as I keep stating, roughly double RDNA 2 performance. Could that be a bit above double? Yeah, it certainly could be, especially with how Lovelace is being overclocked. I wouldn't be surprised if they push the top card a little above where they could have stopped. But I don't think doubling performance is disappointing. This is what I've been saying was the optimistic goal for RDNA 3. Again, for over a year now, guys. So anyone disappointed by AMD doubling performance gen over gen was probably overhyping some bogus crap about 4x or 3x performance that I've been consistently telling you is bullshit for a very long time. And it does bother me, actually, to see this type of disappointment in momentous performance upgrades gen over gen, because I think that tells you guys how damaging this overhyped shit is to the community. When people are disappointed that a new lineup isn't 3 times better than the previous lineup, or that an upcoming APU might only at most double performance instead of triple over its predecessor, then AMD can't win. And this has got to stop. And I don't know how many times this has to happen before people realize they're being taken for a ride by the same cast of characters every generation. So just in general, to round out this part of the video, I am not disappointed by anything I'm hearing about RDNA 3. It sounds very exciting. And Lovelace seems like a massive performance increase, right about where we should have expected it to be, with more power consumption than I think some people expected at first, but of course not 900 watts, and it's launching in Q3, as I've been saying it will be for a while now. And I guess the last thing I will say, though, about that cooler leak is, yeah, I mean, that cooler leak does look legit, and I do want to point a couple things out about it, though, after talking to a couple sources. To me, that cooler looks like it could be 4 slots. Could be wrong. You know, maybe it's got at a weird angle. But to me, that definitely looks at least bigger than the 3090's cooler, which is just insane, but is what you guys should be expecting out of the 4090 Ti. As one of my sources has told me directly that a lot of AIBs are preparing 4.5 slot cards, and that this is going to become some sort of new high-end standard for sizing. And yeah, that's really big. And in fact, another source tells me that the target for 4090 Ti pricing, well, this isn't a big surprise, is around at least $2,000. So no, I don't think you're going to see Nvidia charge $4,000 for the upcoming generation, but it's going to be expensive. And yeah, that's what I expect. Oh, actually, I guess one more thing about Lovelace here, just in case Nvidia does announce everything at Computex, or certainly when they announce everything, I expect some pretty crazy performance claims. But I've got to tell people before you dunk on me or other people, wait for the reviews, because the RTX 3080 was not double the 2080's performance. In fact, it didn't even manage to hit 80% better performance on average. So it was off by quite a bit from that. And Ampere certainly did not almost double Turing's efficiency. So do expect Nvidia, though, to make some pretty wild claims about Lovelace that I think you're going to want to not quote until we get reviews. But that's not the only thing I want to talk about today. I also want to talk a little bit about Alchemist and some key details I've heard about an extreme motherboard chipset from AMD that I think a lot of people aren't actually communicating very well, despite some leaks coming out about it today. But first, an ad from a sponsor. Look, I'm not a morning person. My dog Reese can testify to how hard it is to get me up some days. But at the same time, I'm also not 24 years old anymore. I can't just shotgun 2 whole pots of coffee during a workday and not have my gut get revenge on me eventually. So what is someone like me supposed to do? Well, I can use Magic Mind. Today's content is sponsored by Magic Mind. Magic Mind is a natural little elixir that utilizes matcha, adaptogens, nootropics, honey, and other herbal supplements to do what coffee does, and so much more. It boosts your energy, boosts your memory, boosts your mood, and increases your focus while decreasing inflammation and boosting immunity. Magic Mind can be taken with your morning cup of coffee or with your post-lunch cup as well, just so at the very least, you only need a couple of cups of caffeine a day to feel awake for many hours and not a whole pot. Trust me, I'm not a morning person, and I do work long hours most days. This was a decent alternative that really did work, and as opposed to drinking far too much caffeine, and you should try it yourself. In fact, if you order within the next 10 days at magicmind.co/brokensilicon, you can get 40% off your subscription. Just use the code BROKENSILICON. This really does help the channel, and it helps you stay focused. Help your focus in a healthy way by buying Magic Mind today. Okay, so I've already covered that Lovelace can at least paper launch in July, and it was always going to launch in Q3, and RDNA 3, as far as I'm aware, is perfectly on track with exciting performance for anyone that wasn't expecting delusional levels of performance. But speaking of Q3 launches, Alchemist. So, look, don't take this as like a guarantee, but remember, I've been hearing for months now that some of my sources seriously think a lot of the volume for top-end Alchemist might not even hit until right around Q4. And I've now recently heard a quote from a pretty reliable source that they don't really expect Alchemist to launch significantly before Lovelace at all. And it might even launch after the Lovelace paper launch. So, yeah, I would just say at this point, stop worrying about ARC. Think of any good things that come out of Alchemist as icing on the graphics card launch cake for this year. Don't bet anything on it. The performance estimates that I've expected forever, I don't think they go away, but whatever's going on with their driver optimization is just making this thing come out way later than it should be. So let's just leave it at that. Oh, and RDNA 3 should be launching around October, but that month isn't 100% confirmed yet. And, well, on the AMD note, though, before I go, I really want to talk in detail about AMD's upcoming 600 series chipsets. Yes, there is an Extreme X670, an X670, and a B650, but what differentiates them is actually pretty smart, I think, what AMD's doing here. And I want to break down the details of what you can expect out of Raphael supporting AM5 motherboards later this year. All right, let us get right into it then. AMD 600 chipset leak. Now, AMD has decided to heavily segment their initial AM5 chipset lineup to service several types of customers at launch. Zen 4 has, of course, always supported PCIe 5.0. This was confirmed by me and Genoa and other leakers a very long time ago. But as late as mid-2021, AMD wasn't sure if it was worth enforcing Gen 5 support on B650 and X670 motherboards. You have to understand that even PCIe 4.0 to this day still causes a lot of stress for many manufacturers due to the immense signal integrity demands it requires, and that 5.0 would be even more difficult to support consistently. As Media is stated, in fact, is being the current sole high-end 600 series chipset manufacturer for now, and I must point out that they've just managed to finally tape out PCIe 5.0 products. This is cutting-edge stuff for AMD's suppliers. This wasn't easy for Intel to do, and AMD really was worried about mandating this support until earlier this year when they clearly started telegraphing they were going to. And so what AMD is attempting to do is make things less confusing by having multiple types of chipsets, one that leapfrogs Intel's Z690 and capabilities with a near HDT-like platform, and then also have a version that undercuts the cheaper Z690 boards at the same time. So let's go through them. X670E, expensive, almost HEDT motherboards. This is, has been rumored for I think months now by other people, a dual chipset design with separate chipset dies of the same type of chipset that will allow them to save on design costs, so they don't have to design, both an X670 chipset and 670E and B650, and allows also for better signal coverage across a motherboard. You see, as we get into more complex PCIe standards, the trace length is getting shorter and shorter. Redrivers and retimers, I'm told by a source, are needed increasingly more often, which continues to add a few bucks of cost here and there in multiple parts of a high-end motherboard. If you could place two chipsets at different locations on the motherboard, you should be able to negate the need for at least some of those extra parts, and even if it won't be entirely negated, you'll be able to maintain more high-speed interfaces because there are two chipsets supplying these signals. Basically, the extreme version of X670 will require that the primary M.2 slot connected to the CPU have Gen 5 NVMe drive support, and that the times 16 slot will also need to meet PCIe 5.0 standards. Additionally, I also believe that there will be a mandate for all other slots to be at their highest possible standard. You see, there's going to be a lot of connectivity having dual chipsets on these motherboards, and if you wanted to, you could maybe instead of having, I don't know, 4 or 6 Gen 4 NVMe drives plus a Gen 5 NVMe drive, maybe have a few of them be Gen 3. What AMD wants to do is say, if you get an X670E motherboard, every PCIe lane is at the highest standard it can be. There were no cut corners. If you're paying extra, you're getting extra if there is an extreme moniker. And to be clear, though, at the moment, I personally can only verify that there's at least one Gen 5 NVMe slot on X670E. I've gotten this from multiple sources, so I'm pretty confident in that, but I can only confirm one, and it seems like most things besides the primary graphics card times 16 slot and the primary NVMe slot will be 4.0. And I then therefore expect X670E motherboards to firmly take up the tier of the highest end X570 and Z690 motherboard pricing. Now remember though, I don't think this necessarily because there's two chipsets. Each one of these chipset dies, I'm told costs like 10 to 20 bucks. So I don't think the chipsets themselves are that expensive. They're using two of them so they don't need to spend the millions of dollars to design multiple chipsets, and having multiple chipsets cuts down on some of the other components you would need otherwise. So I do think that this is unlikely to get, there will probably be $500 motherboards, but I do think this is high-end X570, but not changing the overall pricing of the highest end boards. It will be more expensive than the mid-range X570, but I don't think it's going to be Threadripper costs. Additionally, then, there's the X670 chipset, or really the same chipset as X670E, but manufacturers are allowed to cut corners. It still uses the same dual chipsets, but they can, if they want to, have all PCIe 4.0 GPU lanes, maybe have a few of the PCIe NVMe drives not be 4.0, maybe not even have a 5.0 drive if they want to. And this is going to allow some flexibility here. Basically, you should expect this to still offer a boatload of I/O with tons of PCIe lanes, SATA, NVMe, USB ports, just tons, like near HEDT level, but don't expect all of them to be at the highest speeds. And I do expect these to be in the $200 to $300 range, where most Z690 motherboards are right now, while offering definitely better I/O, even if some of the drives aren't and some of the I/O isn't as good as it could be. And then that leaves, of course, B650, what I describe as somewhat limited cutting-edge I/O for high-end gamers. Now, as previously rumored, just to make it very clear here, B650 uses one of the X670 chipsets, and this should still allow, though, for multiple NVMe drives and decent connectivity. Again, I think a lot of people say they'd like more I/O, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't think most people need more than 2 or 3 NVMe drives, 4 SATAs, and like 6 to 10 USB ports. I think the B650 is probably going to be the sweet spot for most reasonable price performance maximizing high-end gaming builds. And this is also, I believe, overlooked by some people. If the manufacturer decides to, they can still support NVMe Gen 5 SSDs, or I should say one NVMe Gen 5 SSD, and a PCIe 5.0 x 16 slot for a graphics card. Now, they'll have to put in that extra component cost to support that, but they only have one chipset, so they can still probably make this thing $120 to $200. And again, considering I don't think most people need more than a few NVMe drives, a few SATA drives, and 6 to 8 USB ports, if that, the fact that you get the latest connectivity in the high-end versions of B650, I think makes the cheaper Z690 boards look kind of stupid, right? And expect way more details in a few days at Computex from AMD. They will be detailing these, I'm told, and showing them off from several manufacturers. So yeah, you guys see what's going on here with AMD's high-end 600 chipsets for AM5. They're going to make it so that if you want one of the highest-end motherboards, you don't have to read as closely as you used to need to, especially for Z690, which frankly I do think is a bit of a mess. DDR4 support, DDR5 support, sometimes Gen 4 PCIe. It's really a mess. This way, if you get an X670E for Extreme motherboard, you're getting Gen 5 support for an SSD, Gen 5 support for future graphics cards, and the ability to use multiple Gen 4 devices if you want to. And then if you just want extra connectivity, but you don't necessarily need the newest standards, which most people really don't, then you can just look at the nitty-gritty details and maybe save $50 to $100 on a normal X670 motherboard that is very likely to still support Gen 5 PCIe graphics card bandwidth and possibly still an M.2 drive, but then maybe you don't need support for like 6 Gen 4 NVMe drives, because who really does? And then below that, if you're a gamer, look, a high-end B650 board should be able to, for less than $200, less than most Z690 motherboard costs, allow you to have the latest SSD speed, support the latest generation of PCIe for graphics cards, and have a couple of extra NVMe drives. Just, one of them might be 4.0 and one of them might be 3.0. But is that really an issue for most high-end gamers? No, it really isn't. And I think it's a smart, cost-effective way of segmenting the high-end while saving on design costs and hopefully eliminating a bit of confusion. And so, yeah, I didn't think a lot of websites covering this leak today really broke that down as well as I thought it should be, and so that's why I did this. But otherwise, when it comes to other upcoming leaks like Lovelace and RDNA 3 and Raphael, Raptor Lake, Meteor Lake, Phoenix, and so much more. Well, you'll have to wait for future videos for me to talk about those. I am done with this one. If you enjoyed it, please upvote it. Please double check that you're subscribed to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel so you don't miss upcoming leaks, and ring the bell button so they actually notify you when they're out. And subscribe to Broken Silicon on your podcast app of choice. Give us a review. That really helps us get noticed by people who maybe don't use YouTube as much as they listen to podcasts. And then, of course, if you have, $2, $4 that you can set aside a month, consider supporting Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon, where you're paying a team of people working together to put together leaks, edit tons of content, and get it to you without ads every week if you support us on Patreon. And that includes tomorrow a new die shrink coming out just for patrons again. And so yeah, all of that's there for you if you have the extra money. But otherwise, to everyone who made it this far, thank you for watching.